Hi, Steve Hayes here, and welcome to Days Are Getting Better, episode 31. I want to go through some exciting news about what I think is one of the most important studies ever done on ACT that portends, I think, a very important part of our future journey. I want to mention an article that has just been finished on lower and middle income countries. I want to talk about a bit about what's coming up at the World Conference of the Association for Contextual Behavioral Science in Buenos Aires in July. Mention a flexible conversation with a plenary speaker who will be there. And then I'm going to talk about some of the changes that are happening in my world, as things that I've worked on for decades are now coming together in such a way that one element can support another. And finally, I got a little teaser about something that's going to be happening very soon, which is just wonderful. So there's a lot of news, all of this, and perhaps a few things more over the next few minutes. Let's start with that study. This is one of the most important studies I've ever read on ACT, and it appeared in the recent issue of The Lancet by Gould et al., and it's on motor neuron disease. And why do I think it's one of the most important studies ever done? Well, part of it is this dreadful disease. Motor neuron disease is an ALS style disease like Lou Gehrig's disease and so forth, which is debilitating, lethal, and modern medical science has basically nothing to offer. About 300,000 patients around the world have it. About 40,000 people a year die from it. For the first time ever, we now have a really well done randomized trial, including some people who you'd probably know well from the ACT community, Lance McCracken, for example, but a really great team in a multi-site study, very carefully done, that showed that ACT can improve the quality of life of these patients with good outcomes through follow-up, and even some features of the person's health. Not that it's reversing the disease, but that the person's ability to keep functioning in the face of what will eventually kill them if something doesn't change in medical science is empowered by the processes that are inside acceptance and commitment therapy work. And there are good indications in the mediational analysis and process analysis that we know how it works, and it works through expanding the psychological flexibility of these patients. Now, why do I think it's one of the most important studies ever done? Even though this is a horrible disease, but it's, a kind of disease that you may not have even ever heard before. It is relatively rare. And the answer is, it's one of many. And this study is so well done and published in the highest impact medical journal in the world, the oldest, The Lancet, even above the American Medical Association JAMA or the New England Journal. And when that happens, and I've seen this happen multiple times now, other teams that are working on similar things, there's many diseases where we are only working at the margins with what medical science can do now. But there's huge things that we can do with psychological science right now. And whether you call it ACT or something else, that's not important. What's important are the human beings who need better care, and helping the medical community think of psychology as a team player, as part of the health sciences, and being able to be there to uplift and support people who are dealing with stage 4 cancer or with other forms of debilitating conditions, multiple sclerosis, and on it goes, is, I think, a powerful application of what we worked on together over the last 40 years to produce. We come together in community. The ACBS community is a good face of contextual behavioral science, and ACT is only one part of the contextual behavioral science community, a very important part of it. But the entire clan will come together this year in Buenos Aires at the end of July. And I want to just mention that I'll be there. I'm doing a 2-day workshop on the role of technology in clinical practice with Maria Carcara and Andrew Gloucester. I'm going to be doing multiple talks and a short workshop with Gijs Janssen during the conference, and a talk on expanding ACT work out into some of the important problems that we face that are social and very challenging to the modern world, such as the stepping up to the climate change conference. But there will also be really, really cool people there, both inside the CBS community and outside, and in a flexible conversation video that is attached to or connected to this episode. Today's are getting better. There's a wonderful conversation with Michael Muthukrishna, who's a cutting-edge evolutionary scientist who is interested in cultural evolution and this dual inheritance theory that I think is amplified by what we know about psychological flexibility processes. And so I recommend that to you, and I think it'll excite you about hearing a lot more from this wonderful scholar and very expansive and creative thinker who knows a lot about multi-level selection and multi-level and multi-dimensional evolutionary principles that are so close to the modern work being done in contextual behavioral science. So check out that conversation, and I hope, if you can, that you'll join the clan there for the first ever World Conference in South America. I titled this, at least mentally, this Days Are Getting Back, a better episode of bringing it all together. Because in my world, some of what's been happening is that things that I've worked on for decades and sometimes have come home. My wife and I started ACT Boot Camp, I think about 12 years ago, and then licensed it to Praxis. And I worked closely with that team as a subsidiary of New Harbinger Publications, and especially with Spencer Smith, who was the over the last several years the director of Praxis. He's left Praxis, and so have I. I wish my friends well there and hope that their company prospers, and I will continue to support them. But by bringing Boot Camp home, and now, I think this is the first time I've announced it, bringing my online courses home, which also had been licensed to Praxis, ACT Immersion, ACT in Practice, ACT Foundations for behavior analysts. That means that the pieces are coming together to make a system work, because these elements are part of a whole. And another one that I've worked on hard is PsychFlex and MindGrapher, and you've heard a lot about that over the last few episodes. PsychFlex is maturing very, very fast. we have some amazing people coming into the app, and MindGrapher is also maturing. And so just over the next several weeks, features are being turned on in MindGrapher, which will really change how you're able to think about using the modern statistical tools that we've been developing in process-based approaches, process-based therapy, that we're calling idionomic statistics, that allow you to measure and model your clients and have that inform and support you in your functional analytic skills and being able to detect psychological flexibility processes. All of those elements now have been brought back home. And what that means is that there's an opportunity to connect and leverage, to make things fit together. So it was kind of the beginning of that, the first ACT boot camp in a long, long time. It used to be done by Jackie and I, organizing it, stuffing the envelopes, getting the little cards that you'll have when they come to boot camp. All of that was done by Contextual Change staff, by ourselves and by people we hire. Contextual Change is the name for my wife and I working together with our LLC. And Contextual Change is now in a position to license boot camp and boot camp for behavior analysts, all the different flavors, to other companies and to independently produce them. And Spencer Smith is right in here working with CCLLC, my wife's and I company, and in cooperation with others. So if you have really always wanted to have a boot camp in your backyard, we'd like to hear about it and to see if we can explore how best to make that happen. But the first one out the door, and the announcements are just landing now, will be happening in Washington, D.C. in October 10th through the 13th at the Omni Showroom, in a cooperative venture for this particular one with PESI, a very well-known workshop company. So we're sure that we're going to be able to do it in a very professional way, and I kind of think it may be one of the biggest boot camps we've ever had. And I'm kind of proud to announce the team that will be there. Robin Walzer, who's I think one of the best and most experienced ACT trainers on the planet. Miranda Morris, former president of ACBS, as was Robin, who is there in DC and is a brilliant clinician and trainer. And Diana Hill, who is also just brilliant in how she trains and how she makes things that are complex be understood. Both Robin and Diana are in PsychFlex, the app, and you can kind of see what's beginning to happen as I'm able to bring it together, where it isn't just the things as products. No, it's the ability to create community around these efforts and amplify the voices of just wonderful professionals who have worked so hard to develop the training skills and the clinical skills and the research skills that now are landing in things like that motor neuron study I just mentioned. And I mentioned Lance McCracken. Lance is going to be in the PsychFlex app just within the next couple of weeks. So that's an example of what I mean by bringing it all together. The same thing will be happening with the courses. The first course, the ACT Immersion, was done outside by CCLC, by my wife and I. And when it was quite successful and we knew that it would be really helpful, then we licensed it to Praxis by bringing it back. I'm able now to serve the members in a different way, because it turns out there's some things that happen because of the laws about how companies work and have to work. For example, I, as a content provider, you'd think it wasn't like this, but actually is, could not directly communicate to the members who had decided to take these online courses the way that I wanted to, because I was not the business entity, once I had licensed it, that was selling it to persons who were wanting to be trained. So here, what I wanted to be able to do with emails and with videos and so forth, of getting people to see how they could use the training to uplift and further what they're doing. I simply wasn't able to do it legally. Now I can, because it's now brought back to CCLLC. And so if you have taken these courses, there's a little delay in Act and Practice, just a couple of weeks, a little more delay in Act Foundations for behavior analysts of making this transition. We've been working really hard for 3 months to have it be seamless, and it has been seamless with Act Immersion, the first big course. You can go to act.courses for all of these. It's very easy to remember. Act, period, the word courses. And that'll take you to the website, the CCLOC website, that'll explain how to take the course if you haven't. They're wonderful courses. But also, now as the transition is being made, you will be getting emails from us as to how to make sure you have lifetime access if you've bought the courses before. And when the update's coming, and now they are coming, when the features are added, and they will be added, that you will be able to take advantage of that lifetime access by being able to look at what's new and take advantage of what we've learned over the several years since these courses have been produced. And there'll be an ongoing conversation. I'm not going to be pitching people and so forth. I'm simply going to be supporting people. But really, what I'm hoping is that people will move over and also connect with the newsletter that brings you Days Are Getting Better, and the flexible conversations and all the other things that I'm trying to do to support the ability of professionals and individuals to take advantage of what's inside acceptance and commitment in therapy and training and relational frame theory work. So those are sort of the exciting announcements, but here's something that's even more exciting, but I can't really fully flesh it out except to say, watch this space. Well, I'll give you a little bit of a form. We've put together a fantastic online conference, where we're calling a summit, on expanding the psychological flexibility model. Really, it's exploring the space in which process-based approaches and acceptance and commitment therapy and its underlying model and RFT and all the rest and all these different areas have come together in ways that now allow us to think even more broadly about how we can serve others and take advantage of what the evidence shows about the most important processes that might be relevant for particular people at particular times. The amazing work on idiomatic statistics. I mean, I'm just gobsmacked by how fast it's going, article after article after article, showing that we really have opened the door to something very, very new. I'll do a talk on that in Days Are Getting Better soon. But in this summit we're putting together, you're going to see a drop-dead, fantastic list of people who've been doing this kind of work, and not just ACT people, and not even just ACBS people. Some really important and large names from even outside the community, but who are interested in processes of change and who see us as fellow travelers. So watch this space, and what we're going to do is offer this summit in such a way that it leverages all the other things I was just talking about, that it helps you have tools in your hands at an amazingly low cost when you really look at what it is that it gives you, that will allow you to amplify your work wherever it is and whatever you're doing. That's a pretty expansive promise. I think I can come pretty close to it, as you look at what's there. It's been a long episode, and I promised actually that I'd say just a little bit about lower and middle income countries. There's a link that is here below about an article that has just been published in Behavior Therapy. And what it is we've walked through the randomized trials on ACT, the first 1,000, and we've looked at all of those that have happened in lower and middle income countries. And then we've done a content analysis using really crazy cutting-edge statistics that allow you to look at an abstract and abstract themes in a way that doesn't have the kind of bias that human observers bring to it. And the bottom line of this article, I'll put a link for a pre-publication version that is free. The bottom line is that the acceptance and commitment therapy and training world has an enormous body of lower and middle income countries randomized controlled trials. And we show in this analysis that you would not be able to properly detect the themes about what's going on in ACT work as well if you ignore the lower and middle income countries' information. You literally would not see the same world. The kinds of studies I was just talking about with the motor neuron where only about 25% of the randomized trials on ACT are done focused on DSM disorders. Do you know that? The focus on behavioral health issues such as motor neuron disease or cancer or diabetes and so forth is actually an even bigger section of the total work. But then on and on it goes over into social wellness and social justice and couples and families and on and on. And so we also show that there's a really terrible bias against properly indexing lower and middle income countries' work. And we have had to fight to index this work in the ACT community. We've spent thousands of hours doing it. I myself have spent many, many, many hours, but the staff and volunteers at ACBS, the committees and so forth, over a period of many years, have put together this amazing resource. And so it's kind of an example of what could happen if we took our sciences and thought more seriously of them as a worldwide effort. And when journals are not indexed, sometimes it's simply because the indexing companies don't want to deal with that particular language community if it's not in English. Do you know it wasn't until 2014 that Korean studies, Korea, were actually put into the Web of Science systematically? What? Yeah, that's true. Only 10 years ago. Why? Because it's just too hard to do, I presume. Well, now with AI tools, it's not that hard to do. And we tend to think of unindexed means lower quality. We actually show, and it probably is true at the extremes and so forth, but we show in this study that some indications of quality, such as the size of the arms in a randomized controlled trial, are actually not predicted in the lower and middle income countries' studies by whether or not the journal is indexed. And something about 85% of the research that's coming out of lower and middle income countries are not indexed. So I recommend the article to you to really think about what we can do. And that's not just the CBS world, it's the ABCT world and the Association for Psychological Science and so on. And so I hope we as a worldwide community begin to take on the idea that we shouldn't just be studying the weird, the Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic countries, which are only about 11 or 12% of the world's population, and in psychology they're about 95% of the research and even more percentage of the citations. That's just wrong. It's not just morally wrong. It's wrong if we really care about the lives of those that we serve. And a final thing I said, and maybe other things that might come up. I know we've had a long episode, but excuse me for the self-focus. But I mentioned the Association for Psychological Science, an association I'm proud to say had a pretty big role in starting. The first office of APS was my lab, I stood up and asked people to step forward in ways that actually led to APS. They gave me the Lifetime Achievement Award in Applied Science, and so there's maybe a picture too in the newsletter. I was really pleased to receive it, honored by it, and really welcome the opportunity to go back to APS and also remind them of the history. Many people in APS don't know that it was the clinicians and applied psychologists who first started the rebellion that led to APS. And by being there, I hadn't been there in years, I also was so impressed by how much progress it's made now of not just being for bench scientists, but also being for clinicians and applied scientists, which was the original vision. And that part of it wasn't due to me. It was due to a lot of other people, Dick McFall and others who fought so hard. But I just want to acknowledge that award and thank them for it. So, until next time, peace, love, and life, my friends.